a non-partisan, nationalistic think tank established more than a decade back with focus on the spheres of information technology, geospatial technology, public policy, research, and national security, along with geopolitics.
Can be attempted in India. Let's turn to the most prolific writer, blogger, strategic thinker.
40 chaps in a room which is supposed to hold only 3 people. So where there's the entire Russian army is only fighting in Ukraine, which is only one part.
Namaste and good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to the day's program by Center for Knowledge Sovereignty. I also extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speaker of the day, Lieutenant General PR Shankar. Sir, thank you for joining us. It is our pleasure to have you with us for the second time now. Before I introduce the speaker, I will briefly introduce our think tank CKS. CKS is a non-partisan, nationalistic think tank established more than a decade back with focus on the spheres of information technology, geospatial technology, public policy, research, and national security, along with geopolitics. CKS has been a pioneer in spreading awareness about data sovereignty and cybersecurity at strategic, political, and national levels. Do visit our website www.cksindia.org to know more about us and for regular updates. I also request everyone to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter as well to stay updated. Over the past few years, CKS is privileged to host on its platform several discussions, roundtables in person, and since COVID-19, we have initiated virtual discussions as well. Thus Spake Generals is one such program which has completed 4 seasons with huge viewership. Today, we are happy to have our third talk of the 5th season of our highly acclaimed flagship webinar, Thus Spake Generals. In the last 4 seasons, we had the privilege of hosting excellent speakers and thought leaders on our platforms such as Lieutenant General Shankar, who is also with us today, Lieutenant General S Kulkarni, Lieutenant General Ata Hasnain, Vice Admiral Sekhar Sinha, Air Marshal SS Soman, AVM Arjun Subramaniam, Air Marshal Anil Khosla, Lieutenant General D DS Hooda, Lieutenant General Zamiruddin Shah, Vice Admiral Anil Chopra, Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, Rear Admiral Sudarshan Shrikhande, Air Marshal D Choudhary, Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, Lieutenant General Shokin, Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, Lieutenant General Vinod Khandare, and Lieutenant General Satish Dua. In this season also, we have a very impressive lineup of acclaimed speakers. We had Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma and Air Marshal Anil Khosla in the last 2 weeks. Today is the third talk. Also, kindly make note in your calendar that our next 2 talks will be on 2 consecutive days. That is on 23rd of September, Saturday, and 24th of September, Sunday, back to back. We are not doing any event in the next 2 weeks on Sunday, but our event will be next on 23rd September, Saturday, and 24th September, Sunday. Please note that the views expressed by the speakers on this platform are their individual views, and CKS is merely a platform hosting these talks. I request all the members of the audience to put their questions in the chat box, addressing it to AVM Sinha sir at the end of the talk so that the speaker is not disturbed. Please keep the question short, crisp, and relevant to the topic. We are also currently live on our Facebook page of CKS, and the talk will also be available on the CKS YouTube channel shortly, along with the other social media handles. CK is honored and privileged to host on its platform the 5th season of our flagship webinar, Thus Spake General. Today, in our third talk of the series, we are honored and privileged to have once again in our platform a very acclaimed and highly decorated veteran, Lieutenant General PR Shankar, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, former Director General of Artillery. General Shankar is an alumnus of prestigious Defense Services Staff College, Wellington, Naval Postgraduate School, Monterey, and National Defense College, New Delhi. The general had held many important command, staff, and instructional appointments and has vast operational experience of serving in all kinds of terrain and operational situations, including counter-insurgencies. He gave great impetus to the indigenization and modernization of artillery and was instrumental in induction of guns like Dhanush, M777 ULH, Sharang, and K9 Vajra, also known as also the Pinaka, BrahMos, and Grad BM21 systems. He worked under late Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, who was the Honorable President of India and an acclaimed scientist, Lieutenant General V.J. Sundaram, and Dr. V.K. Saraswat, member of the Niti Aayog in DRDL Hyderabad in the 80s during initial development of the Agni and Prithvi missile systems. He was a member of the committee to evolve the long-term technology perspective plan of the DRDO. He is a member of the Chennai Center of China Studies and has co-founded CASA, a virtual think tank on current and strategic affairs. Presently, General Officer is a professor of practice at IIT Chennai and is actively involved in applied practical research there. He also advises the Tamil Nadu government in the development of defense corridor and has written over 300 articles on strategic affairs, defense planning, and defense technology. His articles are widely read on www.gunnershot.com. Now I request Air Vice Marshal Pranay Sinha, AVM retired, moderator of the session, to take the program further. Ladies and gentlemen, AVM Pranay Sinha, in his 35 years of distinguished career, held many important appointments in the Indian Air Force and post-retirement worked as an advisor to Bharat Electronics Limited for 3 years. He is presently engaged as a strategic advisor to the IIT Mandi and is an active member of our think tank. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam. Viewers, Madam Sumitra Goenkaji is Director Rating Infotech, CEO Triangle Global, and our strongest pillar of strength, main Sutradhar of CKS India. Very good evening, viewers, to this third talk of our flagship webinar, Thus Spake Generals. But before I invite the scholar soldier general, let me contextualize the subject of the evening in a minute. As per Xi Jinping, son of heaven, head of the party, government and military of China, has given the assurance to his countrymen for the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation by 2049. That is by the centenary celebration of the People's Republic of China. And one of the main strategies to achieve this aim is to boost their economy, at the same time insulate it from the world's blockades and sanctions, and to lessen the impact of economic slowdown which is going on presently, as well as of shrinking population. This is by reducing its dependence on foreign supply chain and by boosting its domestic consumption through dual circulation, achievable by military-civilian fusion, MCF. To build an integrated national strategic system and to support the goal of national rejuvenation, MCFs can leverage emerging and cutting-edge technologies developed for civilian use to boost its military capability. China has adopted a whole society effort to acquire it by all means, including technology theft, force transfer, or diversion of civilian know-how to achieve leadership in AI, artificial intelligence, nanomaterials, newer energy technologies, quantum, cyber technology to trigger economic as well as military gains. Well, we are today, all are aware that how the mighty military complex MIC of USA is driving its economy. At present, when most of the Western's world economy is going down, the US big five weapon manufacturers, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, have made huge profits due to ongoing Ukraine crisis. And the US MIC's future looks very promising as long as the world remains geopolitically unstable and lingers in crisis and chaos. During World War II, USA went through a process of intense civil-military fusion. The entire American MIC focused on churning out military equipment which could beat the Germans and Japanese qualitatively and quantitatively, and they did it successfully. The mighty MIC of USA, which drives its economy, is all about seamless civil-military fusion. This is what China wants to replicate and is doing with great success. In case of China, please note that for the military, it is the civilian companies to work first. Any commercial benefit of theirs comes thereafter. It is for this reason that it is referred as military civil fusion in China rather than generally known as civil military fusion elsewhere. And most important factor in civil military fusion is breaking of silos, the barriers, the wall with policy hammer, and integrating various government departments and organizations to break the inter-ministry rivalry, interstate competition, all through empowered structure and well-defined hierarchy. It has to be a top-down approach. In fact, the first step is politico-military bureaucratic fusion. If this can be achieved even partially, we will have our way. And to suggest how this can be attempted in India, let's turn to the most prolific writer, blogger, strategic thinker, General PR Shankar. Sir, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Air Vice Marshal Pranay Sinha. At the outset, it's a great pleasure to be back at the CKS and talking about this important subject. I'd also like to thank Mrs. Sumitra Goenka for the generous introduction. And I also, it's in fact indeed a great pleasure for me to meet Mrs. Not Mrs. I would say everyone on CKS and speak once again on your platform. Of course, a special mention, of course, to Mrs. Deepa Prakash, because she gives me a lot of enthusiasm when I write my articles and gives me some feedback. Right. Having said this, today's topic is civil-military fusion. Now, civil-military fusion is not something very new. It's pretty old, right? It's only that it's come into focus recently because the Chinese have made it so. Do we need civil-military fusion? There is no doubt about it. Right? Is civil-military fusion a new thing? It is not. It's a pretty old concept. But we need civil-military fusion for India, not the Chinese model. We need civil-military fusion for India, not the American model. And you think only USA and China are in civil-military fusion? No, the same thing exists in Russia also. So what we'll do today is I'll take you through a few paces. Because over a period of time, ever since I've started studying this subject, I myself have changed my ideas as to what civil-military fusion in India is required to be done. Right? With this, what I'll do is I'll share my screen and my slides, and we'll go through the whole thing. I hope everyone can see it. Can I get a confirmation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are.
Yeah. Thank you. Right. So this is so today I'll cover the whole thing and I'll keep explaining as I go along as to what this whole story is all about. Okay, now if you see this cartoon, this is from the South China Morning Post, and it shows a world being split by Mr. Biden, Narendra Modi ji, Xi Jinping, and Putin. It is actually reflective of the times. And if I extend it a little further, today the world is in a quadrilateral. India is in a quadrilateral, which I call it the global power matrix, right? Where two ends of the quadrilateral are represented by USA and India, right? With attraction in between them. And at the other end of the quadrilateral is China and Russia, the other two great powers of the world who are attracted to each other. The problem with this quadrilateral is that it is being pulled from all directions and opposite directions. But what is the reality today is that USA remains the dominant power in the world. China is an aspiring power, but weakening due to its declining economy and demography. Russia is entering a phase of weakness due to its prolonged Ukraine war. And in times to come, it might not recover so easily. And of course, we have India, which today is getting onto the center of the global stage. It is a growing power which is emerging from its own reticence. So this whole story of civil-military fusion has to be seen in this context. Because if India has to be a power in its own right and be an important player in this global matrix, there is no choice but to go through the civil-military fusion, right? The climb to the top will be steep, and we have to understand in this climb, there's going to be conflicts and wars, And these wars are likely to be long, unlike what we thought of so far, that it will be short and sweet wars. I think the Ukraine war has shown something completely different. And you need a whole of the nation approach to go where you have to go. And for all this, you need civil military fusion without an iota of a doubt. Okay, having said that, there are a few technologies which I call civil military technologies of this century. What are these technologies? If you see, these are quantum computing, AI, space, cyberspace, uh, additive manufacturing, synthetic biology, which is something which I never realized existed till a few days back, right? Semiconductors, energy, manned, unmanned systems, data sovereignty, which, of course, when you say knowledge sovereignty, you're also talking of data sovereignty. And then we're talking of communication and networking. And if you see the characteristics, the yellow ones tell you all these things are not only made in the military, but it is also, in the civil domain. In fact, their origins are from the civilian environment, right? And especially here, I'd like to highlight the energy, which is the fusion energy, which has been discovered or rather tried out twice in the Livermore lab, which is going to change everything across in the future. After all, we must remember all this, going up to moon and Chandrayaan and the Pragyan thing, everything is all about searching for energy to go into outer space. Okay, what's the US model? Like what the Air Vice Marshal said, USA went through a process of intense civil military fusion during the Second World War, and they evolved their military industrial complex. It was producing military aircraft by the hour, tanks by the day, and warships by the week or even less. The entire American industry focused on churning out military equipment which could beat the Germans and Japanese qualitatively and quantitatively, and they did it successfully. And they exhibited this level of civil military fusion in the last century, just about 80 years back. And this was at the end of the Depression. If anything, this kind of a civil military fusion is what brought America out of its own depression. And from then, it has not looked back. Right. Now, what is the model? You have to see what the model is all about. First and foremost, civil military fusion in USA is intrinsic to its society. There is no, like I just showed you, all the military technologies, civil military technologies of the century originate largely from the civil world, and they're part of the society. Okay, they're not designated or discussed as civil military fusion in USA, right? They used as spoken of as civil, dual use technologies. The technologies are highly disaggregated but focused. There's a tremendous focus. The development is disaggregated and the utility is completely aggregated. Now, the next point is that the cutting edge technologies are being researched and developed in the USA in the private sector at scale. And these are being, realized not in the traditional military industry complex. That's gone beyond that. OpenAI is not a MI, part of the traditional MIC of USA. Or for that matter, that Livermore lab is not, part of DARPA. That's the interesting part. What is happening is outside the traditional thinking of MIC. But it is a key component of the US economy. Okay, the part which is actually more interesting and which we need to adopt is that the military industrial complex has traditionally been the designer, developer, producer, and supplier of cutting-edge technology and weapons globally. And they have a global reach, there's no doubt about it, right? And that has powered their economy to a greater level, and that has triggered a lot of inventive thinking and next-generation technologies for uses everywhere. Okay, now, when you look at the Chinese model, it's a little different, right? It is a six-faceted model. It fuses the defense and civil technology and the industrial base. And that's what the AVM also did mention. It looks at integration of science and technology innovations. And all this you'll see, the fundamental reason you'll see the slight difference between these two models. I wouldn't say slight difference, a hell of a lot of difference, is because of the gulf in technology, or the chasm in technology which exists between USA and China. Let's not have any doubts about it. There's a big gap, and that is not going to change, and especially with the CHIPS Act coming in. It also talks of blending expertise and knowledge and talent cultivation, which means in the Chinese model, there's lack of talent. It also talks of civilian infrastructure and construction being leveraged for military purposes by building them to military requirements and standards. Right? Now, if you see the US model, they don't talk of all this. Why is China doing all this? Because it lacks in many of these issues. Right? Now, the civilian services and logistics are utilized for military purposes, dual use. Now, all aspects of society and economy are utilized for mobilization of resources and capabilities for defense of the nation. It's again a whole of the nation approach. Okay, what does it do? What does the civil-military fusion, what is the structure all about? I mean, that's the interesting part. The interesting part is that it got established somewhere in the turn of the century, but it lingered in China as civil-military integration, but they didn't find it useful. Xi Jinping, when he came into power, said that I'm going to do something different. And then in 2015, civil-military fusion or military-civil fusion, whichever way you call it, it was elevated to a national level strategy. Why? To build an integrated national strategic system and capabilities to support the goal of national rejuvenation. The first part is very clear, integrated national strategic system and capabilities. What is this goal of national rejuvenation? It's up for grabs. And it depends on how you look at it. Many say it's part of the Sino-centric world order. Many say it's just to grab Taiwan. But definitely, if you take the worst case scenario, they want to be the most dominant power on the earth. And that's what they call national rejuvenation. Now, the interesting part here is that the overall management and implementation of this entire civil military complex is monitored and managed by the Politburo, which is the highest body in China. The State Council. The State Council is virtually something like our CCPA or the CCS, the way you like it, Cabinet Committee of Security or Cabinet Committee of Political Affairs or whatever it is at the apex level, the core of the ministries. And it includes the National Development and Reform Commission and the Central Military Commission. So one of the things which you see in the civil-military fusion in China is that there is a fusion at the government level and the military level. Now, a Central Commission for Military Civil Fusion Development, CCM-CFD, was established in 2017. It was headed by Xi Jinping along with Premier Li Keqiang. Of course, today's Premier takes over, Li Keqiang is retired. So you see that this whole business of civil-military fusion is being headed by the top people, and it is a top-driven strategy and is a key factor of their whole story. Right? The most powerful people and organs of the state own and implement civil-military fusion. There's nothing lesser than that. Okay. Now, what is it there for India? In India, we are not anywhere near. Let's be very clear about it. We don't have a concept of civil-military fusion the way it is there in any other, other developed countries. If you want to be an important player of that global power matrix which I showed earlier, I think this is my way of looking at it. You need 4 facets of civil-military fusion. The first is politico-military fusion. The second is information, strategic communication, and new technology fusion. Then you need to have the traditional industrial civil-military fusion, which many people in India talk of. The interesting thing is I've heard this talk from very intelligent people, educated people, and people who do research, professors, everything in great think tanks. When you talk of civil military fusion, everyone takes out the Chinese model and reads it out to us as to what they're doing. And then they say we should ape them. That's the worst thing we can do because it doesn't suit us. And the second part of the story is our requirement of civil military fusion is completely different. So then the third part, like I said, is industrial civil military fusion. And last but not the least, you need economic and financial fusion. If you don't have these, you're going to be struggling, right? I've broken up this entire mega thing called the civil military fusion in small parts so that we can understand it better. It's not necessary that all of them have to be achieved at the same time. They can. That's why when you disaggregate it, then you say, okay, you have different landmarks for each and different milestones for each. You can achieve it and keep going ahead without being interdependent completely beyond a point. Okay. Now, what is this politico-military fusion all about? It is the ability to maintain the balance of power. If you want to get into the global power matrix, you have to be able to maintain the balance of power. So that means you need capabilities to be there. What does it mean? It means preparing nations for war. Because in preparing a nation for war, you get that capability development and the power to be part of the matrix. Okay. And then you have to be very clear if you get into conflict situations or confrontation situations, what are your aims, terminal objectives, and exit strategies when in conflict. And that's what you're seeing in Russia. Russia has got into conflict, great power, it's not able to get out of conflict. And I'd like to give an example here. Once, long back, our Prime Minister Vajpayee ji was asked, so why don't you prosecute a war with Pakistan? And his answer was, yes, हम लड़ाई तो लड़ लेंगे, उसके आगे क्या होगा? वो लड़ाई को कैसे खत्म करेंगे? उसके बाद हमारा शांति का स्थिति क्या होगा? So that kind of a thing obviously was not there at that time. And since that clarity of thought was not there between the civil and the military, we couldn't prosecute war, much against most of our wishes that we should have sorted out Pakistan 20 years back. And then you need to have clarity in the role of armed forces in internal situations. And that is very important, right? If you don't have that clarity of a role of armed forces when being employed in internal situations, you're going to struggle. Okay, well, I'll highlight both of this, right? Look at it, take the Russian model of, because that is there in front of all of us. And we will be able to derive some lessons out of it. Look at Russia. It had a clear aim to start. How to keep NATO out of Ukraine. How did to achieve it? It was very clear that I have to prosecute a military offensive. But then the offensive lacked training to prosecute regime change or maneuver. So there was no clarity or there's no fusion in this whole story as to how they could do regime change in Kyiv. If they didn't do it, they floundered. And then when the whole thing came to the push, or the push came to the shove, they couldn't maneuver. Their lack of maneuverability and their inability to maneuver stems from basic fundamental training. And that fundamental training is lacking because of conscription. So the military civil fusion said, go for conscription, but then you weakened your army. And as a result, now you're going in for, professional military contractors like Wagner to do your dirty jobs. Okay. On the other hand, look at Ukraine. What has emerged is that they were preparing for this war since long with complete politico-military fusion. Whatever you might say about Ukraine, that he is dependent on USA, he's got no economy, no nothing, but it has lasted 16 years with almost nothing against a great global power, which is supposed to have the greatest military, one of the greatest militaries on earth, with almost nothing, borrowed equipment, everything. But There's a very clear case of politico-military fusion. Now you look at EU, NATO, or USA. They are very clear not to get involved in war, but they want to support Ukraine and bleed Russia in a hybrid war. There's complete politico-military fusion there. They have been able to fuse their political objectives with their military objectives, and they're achieving it through Ukraine. It's always now these days it's said that these three people will fight. Russia will fight Russia till the last Ukrainian. We don't know the outcomes, but you see why Russia has not been able to make headway, because their politico-military fusion is lacking. In fact, if anything today, it's tottering, right? We don't know whether Putin will be displaced or not. It might not happen, but you find that, fusion is not there on one side. Okay. Now, let's look at it internally. Look at in Manipur, what's happening in Manipur. Now, this is the, message which the Indian Army put out. Fabricated attempts to malign image of Assam Rifles. For all those of you who don't understand Assam Rifles is not a paramilitary battalion. They're a paramilitary force in the true sense, right? It's first, and nor is it a Northeast force. It's an all India, all class force. One. Number two, it is officered by the Indian Army completely. And it is only employed under the Indian Army or independently. It is never even employed under the normal police or the normal state also. Okay, it's almost an army. I mean, it's an army and it is under the operational control of the army. Now, if this force, which is used only sparingly for certain purposes, has to say the last paragraph, Indian Army and Assam Rifles assure the people of Manipur that we will continue to remain firm and resolute in our action to prevent any attempt that could result in furthering violence in an already volatile atmosphere. Then there's a very clear case of lack of civil military fusion. In fact, this problem has been going on for so long. It is very ironic that the government of the day, whether it's in the state or in the center, calls out your own force and then you file an FIR against it. You can file an FIR against the individual in that force. You can file a FIR against the battalion in that force for having this thing, but you can't file an FIR against Assam Rifles at large. And then say maintain peace. So there is a dissonance. Even if you have to do this, then it lacks fusion. If this fusion and common thinking is not there, things will not get solved. In fact, it is unprecedented. And this unprecedented situation is what the DG Assam Rifles himself has said 2 days back in an interview. So if you have this kind of a problem, you're not going to get anything done. And if you don't get anything done in an internal problem, you might not be able to do something in an external problem tomorrow. Remember, if you have stomachache, you will definitely not fight. And today, Manipur is not even a stomachache, it's a bit of a headache also. Because it has got external dimensions, it has got internal dimensions, it has got internal dimensions to the state, and it has got regional dimensions. And we don't have a civil military fusion there, politico-military fusion there. Okay. Right. Then I'll talk of the information, strategic communication, and new technology fusion. What is this all about? I'd shown you the slide earlier on, military technologies of the century. It's all about information, battlefield transparency, etc., etc., etc. All this I have put it. And the important aspect is that this civil capacity is being developed at scale in the civil sector and can be used in war. For example, SpaceX Starlinks is being extensively used in Ukraine. So is cloud, Amazon's. So is the AI being developed by Microsoft, has been deployed in Ukraine. You'll be surprised. And all these ideas, where did I get it from? I got it from a conversation between Eric Schmidt, who was the ex-CEO of Google, right, and this chief technology officer of OpenAI, that was ChatGPT-4, that firm. They were talking in an open thing for about 40 minutes conversation, and they spelled out how these new technologies are being used in war. And the transfer is from the civil domain to military domain. And it has happened in the context of, from USA to Ukraine very seamlessly. Right. All these dual purpose new technologies are ideal for civil military fusion. Okay, that brings me to the next point. Recently, our Prime Minister went to USA and met President Biden, and we decided on something called ISET, that is Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies. And this is the fact sheet put out by the White House. It's unprecedented in its scope. I've never seen it happen like anything like this in my whole life, right? And what did this talk of? It spoke of the ISET speaks of semiconductors, artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, advanced wireless communication, space, launching a new innovation bridge that will connect US and Indian defense startups, actualizing the civil nuclear deal. Basically, in my view, we need to get more plutonium and thorium reactor technology and much more, because that energy is what we need and we are deficient of. And all this was put in this fact sheet. I just put it in point form here. Now, how do you convert all this into actuality? Is you will not be able to do it, right, if you don't have civil military fusion. And even if you have civil military fusion, this conversion and application across the civil and the military side will take 8 to 10 years. So you need to think differently if you want to get on to being an important player in the global power matrix. Not that we are not important, but you need to be more relevant. And you need to be more relevant because you today are the 5th largest economy. And as you want to transit to the 3rd largest economy and zero in on to China, you need to do something different. And unless you do so, you also don't deter China from doing all the nonsense it is doing on the LAC. Because China respects strength. And your strength has to be derived from these technologies. Okay. Now, when you look at it holistically, right, what do you see? When you look at the industrial fusion, you must understand, we spoke so far that the US capacities defeated the Germans. But more importantly, it was the Soviet capacities of the last century which defeated Germans. In the first phase of the Second World War, till about 1944, still Stalingrad took place. The Germans were on the ascendancy and they finished off complete the Soviet armory. In the face of the enemy, the Soviets, from the very place of Ukraine, Kiev, right, they shifted their factories, tank factories out and took it beyond Moscow to the east, rebuilt them and started building, huge capability and put tanks on the ground to fight Battle of Kursk in 1944. From 42 to 44, a matter of 2 years. And Kursk has been the biggest battle mankind has ever seen, where at a point of time, there were over 2,500 tanks in motion. And even today, Russia's huge industrial capacity sustains its war effort over the 1.5 years this battle has been on. Now, what you have to see is Russia's huge export capacity has been converted into surge capacity to sustain spurts and long wars. Here's a lesson. When you have an MRO capability of aircraft instituted in India, it also gives you the ability to sustain long wars. If you have an export policy, which the government has started, it is fledgling, steps. But if you increase your export capability, that export capability will help you tomorrow to, go through a. Let me assure you this. You start exporting ammunition to all our neighboring countries, make all our neighboring countries dependent on us for their warlike stores and dual technology stores, including Myanmar, right? And you'll find that China will start backtracking. And your power structure will undergo a tremendous change. Okay. And you don't need great technologies for this. Existing technologies. Maybe technologies which are even a quarter century old. Capability. Okay. So what is it that we have to do in, to look at it? I've looked at 5 clusters. Okay. What are these 5 clusters? And these 5 clusters are based on our own capability. The first cluster is successful in key sectors of national importance: defense, space, atomic energy, and communications. Energy and communications, where we've had good grounding of technology and where we have achieved success. Build on your success. That's the first part, right? It's not as if we are not doing it, we are doing it. Space is the example, right? We're going to have a spaceport down further south near Karaikudi, right? And that comes up, and that spaceport is going more the civil way. There is already civil military fusion taking place. Okay. The second cluster has to be disruptive and modern technologies like AI, cyber, and all these, which we have spoken of. But to achieve civil military fusion in this, you need to have a national program and mission mode. And this must include the academia, startups, venture capitalists, established private industry with international linkages. And this has to be facilitated by the government. You could have AI parks, you might have cyber parks, you have additive manufacturing, zones, whatever you want to do, but you have to do it differently. What we are doing today is absolutely out of whack. You will not achieve anything if the way we are going. You will achieve something, but not in the time frame, not in this Amritkal period, the way we want it. Right? And you will not be able to convert ISET into something pragmatic and enhance the Indo-US equation. Right? A lot of people talk of being independent and all that. I think the age and day when India has to remain independent and non-aligned is over. You need a major partner. You always needed a major partner. Till now, it was Russia. Okay, you needed Russia one way or the other. We couldn't have won the 71 war without the deal being signed by Mrs. Indira Gandhi and Brezhnev. Similarly, tomorrow, you want to be a big power in the world, you need to have either Russia or USA on your side. And Russia going the Chinese way, you must hedge your bets. Okay, the third sector or the third cluster has to be infrastructure and logistics. Again, here we have achieved quite a bit, but we need to do more. Okay, I've listed everything out: rails, road, airport, ports, where, all that nonsense. But most importantly, we have to focus on our Himalayan borders. And this needs different technologies. The standard technologies which you use in our planes won't work there. Right? And you also have to look at renewable energy or special energy sources for the high altitudes. And a lot of people are living there besides the armed forces. And development of those areas will contribute immensely to our national fabric. And we have to think seriously about it. Right. Then you have something called financial fusion. Right? Our current financial fusion models, our way of going about everything is absolutely archaic. We have to think something else. You have to think something based on venture capitalism and market principles. And then, of course, the last is the bread and butter technology of goods manufacturing and all, where dual use can be exploited. You keep doing it, which we have been doing so far. Okay. Now, when you look at it, what is the economic and financial fusion you're looking at? Look at it. Russia has been preparing for this eventuality for a long time. That's why they could sidestep sanctions. And luckily, We know how to do it because we've been under sanctions for a long time. Through the best part of the past 75 years, we've been under some sanction or the other. We know how to do it. But are we focusing it through that mode and through those lenses to ensure our own progress is a question mark. You need Atmanirbharta. Okay, you need to be able to financially withstand cost of war since, unless it's a costly business war. Russia is able to do it because it owns its technology. Unless we own our technology, we will not be able to handle long wars. And last but not the least, we need to reduce import dependence on China. We cannot allow China to weaponize our trade imbalance, right? And all this will come through Atmanirbharta. On that, I don't think you have a doubt or any one of us have a doubt. Okay, if you look in the Indian context, when was our civil military fusion at its peak? I would say 1971 was the prime example of our civil military fusion, where within a matter of 14 days, we could create another nation. It has never been done in the history of mankind before, or I don't think it can be done after. All you have to see is how Russia is struggling in Ukraine, how USA struggled in Afghanistan, and how China is scared to go across 200 kilometers of water to usurp or rather invade Taiwan with a small 200 by 200 kilometer. Here, you created a nation in 14 days. And in fact, the other way of looking at it is you broke a nation in 14 days, conclusively, and you earned 30 years of peace. Okay, now in the Indian context, if I highlight, it is not as if we don't know. In 2019, our Prime Minister highlighted the need for a future-ready force at the Combined Commanders Conference. He spoke of shedding legacy systems and practices and have a holistic approach focused on breaking down civil military silos and expediting the speed of decision-making beyond weapon procurement. What was he speaking? This is what he spoke. And these words are exactly from what he spoke that day. And what is it? This is all about civil military fusion. Are we practicing it? Unfortunately, is he being supported by his own council of ministers, by his own advisors? You will find the answer wanting. Right? Have a look at this. Right? Our capex in the last budget went up from 2.7 to 3.3% of the GDP. And people say by the end of this financial year, March, April next year, it'll likely to go up to 4.5. And with our GDP now running at about 6.77, in fact, the last quarter being 7.8, this will be easily reached. Right. There's a huge emphasis on technology upgradation, including disruptive technologies. That I said is a thing which I've already said. But your defense outlay is barely 2% of the GDP. And there's no talk of convergence of any kind. If you don't have this convergence, if you don't invest in your military and for your military technology, I'm afraid you'll not be able to do much in the civil side also. There's a divergence. And look at the next thing, which is actually very funny. India held the Aero India 2023, which featured military aircraft recently in Bangalore. In fact, I went and attended it. Right. In January next year, we're going to have Wings India 2024. And it is being held at Hyderabad, which is only for civil aircraft. Okay. I mean, the funny part here is India is the only country which holds 2 air shows in a year. Within a year, that separately for civil and military airspace sectors. Now, I don't think this is civil military diffusion, it is civil military diffusion. No other country holds 2 aerospace exercises. Just think, our defense ministry and civil aviation ministry are not even talking to each other. Okay. Why is it so? It's not enough that, a think tank like yours or a few others speak of civil military fusion and then just forget about it because it's good theory. And it's a good talk and good thought. You need your national thought, investment and growth to be immersed in this thinking of civil military fusion. At this point of time, I'm afraid we don't have it. And we need it. Right. And if you have to do all this, you need the political will and drive. If you don't have the political will and drive, it won't happen. Now, in this century, the Chinese have displayed that without political will and drive, it won't happen. In the last century, it was the Russians and the US who did it. And the century before that, it was the British people who did this. They had the political will and drive to fuse civil and military. If you're looking at political military fusion, the model is the British model during the colonization period. Or for that matter, even the French model or the German model and the Dutch model. The Dutch had a very good model of civil political-military fusion when it came to, in the colonial times. Then you need committed funding. You have to invest into this. You have to invest into this. It is not investing into the military. It is investing into civil-military fusion. You invest in dual-use technologies, you will get the fruits. Then, of course, is it to be services-driven or top-driven or a combination of both? That's something which we have to decide. But at this point of time, I don't think the services have the capability to do so for many reasons. It has to be top-driven with some person who can really understand technology and do it. I keep saying, India is unfortunate that Manohar Parrikar ji passed away when he did. Right? It is a great sense of misfortune, I feel, even today, because he understood this more than anyone. And I can watch it with personal examples. And if he had been there around it today, we might be going on a different path. We might be very early in that, nascent in that path, but our path would have been very clear because he understood technology like no one else I have come across in my entire service who could understand this business. And then, of course, you have to stay the course. Okay, you have to stay the course. And if you don't stay the course, you're going to be problematic. You have to adapt as things change. If you see, the old US model is no more the current US model. The Chinese model itself is morphing day by day. Every day it's morphing. And then you need this politico-military bureaucratic fusion. AVM Sinha did speak of it, but let me tell you, why bureaucratic? In every country, the political representative is elected by us. He is mandated by the Constitution of India to defend the country and take forward the national interests of the nation. Right? In the same way, the armed forces, by the pleasure of the president, is given an edict to defend the integrity and sovereignty of the nation. And in doing so, in giving a protective environment, is supposed to take the progress the interests of the nation. These people are charged to do so officially, mandated to do so officially. If they don't do it, they can be taken to task. A military officer can be sacked. A politician, when he goes back next to the, to get his votes, he can be thrown out by the people if he doesn't do. But the bureaucrat, he's not accountable in this paradigm. In our country, he is the conduit between the political bosses and the military superiors. And this conduit has traditionally not worked well. We have to understand it. It is not that the bureaucrat is a bad man. In fact, I think he's a very good man. The best of our country, youth, join the bureaucracy with great ideal. And I have served with great, very good bureaucrats. And I have a lot of respect for them. But why this triangle doesn't work is something for us to introspect. Right. With this, I have finished. I'll stop sharing and I'm open for any questions. All yours. The floor is open.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for this very informative, eye-opening and enlightening talk, sir. In fact, not only you have reiterated the thing, how it should be go about, you have mentioned the 4 facets, the politico-military fusion. I think how and when it will come, yes, you have said that, yes, political willpower and the top-driven approach has to be there. let's hope, sir, for Atmanirbharta, we have to depend. You have very categorically said that we have to either take side, whether we go with ISET and go with USA or go with Russia. But Russia, of course, with the Chinese, the way they are waning and decreasing their influence, maybe we have to hedge our bets with the US. Sir, you have very nicely explained the 5 clusters to go ahead. And we are somewhere having all those things we are debating in the country, we are having, but somewhere you have also highlighted the gap which is existing, maybe somewhere in our, the way political military, you gave the example of Manipur, how there this fusion is not there, how the gap is there, the narrative buildup is not there, somebody attacks and we cannot defend, at least narratively. And of course, today's the world is fully driven by these narratives. And today's Indian Times of India, sir, Swaminomics, it says that how the Western media is projecting the war. Of course, you gave the example that both Ukraine and the Russia both had prepared very well with the civil military fusion, but still the NATO has the up in because they are driving the whole narrative. And Russia, though it is today, it is seems to be getting defeated, but it is not so. Swaminomics very categorically says, and in fact, they are going to bounce by in the economy also. So all these narratives and all these things is known, but still, I don't know, sir, why. And let's hope that this enlightening lecture is heard by somebody from the PMO and somebody from the top, so that the political, military, bureaucratic fusion takes place. At least we take ahead. Sir, I have got 2-3 questions for you. So the first question, you very categorically said that we conduct in a year 2 aero show biannually, Aero India for the defense, and then the other one which is going to be held, and
Wings
both
India.
are happening. Yeah, in India, and both are happening, sir, on the tarmac of the Air Force. This thing, one Yelahanka and one is the Begumpet. Why the services can't? And of course, you have said, and then you have kept quiet there. The services should at least they should come forward and they should propose that. Listen, why we can't have one? Any
I don't
comment
know.
on this, sir?
I mean, why should the services do? That's what I keep saying. It's the political masters who have to think. Why is
somebody has to throw the bait? Somebody has to put the papers. Listen, it's a high time that we put the resources together.
If the look. If the civil aviation minister and the defense minister can't sit across the table and talk about this, why should the chief of the air staff think of it? I mean, I would say, look, and that is why I'm questioning it. Let me put it this way: I'm from the services. I'm questioning it. Who else has questioned it? Who else has questioned it? I've questioned it now. I've questioned. This is not the first time. I'm questioning it the second time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are. I'm with you, sir. I'm saying that the Air Force, which always project that all the air power assets supposed to be in the wartime, should be with the Air Force. So they should be there, and they should project a listen. We have to go together. Anyways,
I agree with you. But maybe they have done and not been listened to. Who knows?
Yes, sir. So the one question which has come very this thing: why large army? And this is from the Madam Sumitra. Why large armies have not won any war against small armies? Is it because of good civil military fusion? Example.
Look, no. Let's put it this way: large armies have not fought with each other, first and foremost. So we don't know who's won, who's lost. Okay, and large armies who have fought outside their country. And it is just not large army which can win against a small army. It is what's the armies which are fighting across in a piece of terrain. In a piece of terrain, only that much army can be deployed. You can't put 40 chaps in a room which is supposed to hold only 3 people. So where the entire Russian army is only fighting in Ukraine, which is only one part of the whole thing. Similarly, tomorrow China, if it fights against India along the Himalayas, can only deploy that much of its army. Its entire army we cannot be deployed. Just because you have a large army, it doesn't mean you deploy everyone there to the detriment of the rest of your nation. So actually, when you see any battlefield, the opposing sizes are almost the same, except in asymmetric situations which have happened in Afghanistan and in Vietnam. Even there, the asymmetry is in technology, not in the forces. If you see, Taliban had probably more fighters than the Americans had there. Okay. The Vietnamese had more people on ground than the French or the Chinese or the American throughout the history. Okay. So there is a difference, the thing. So the concept that just because you have a large army and you must win, or you're bound to lose against a small army, you need to rethink. You need to rethink in the practicality of the situation.
Yes, sir. You answered this reminding of the technology. Why is today, sir, we should go for the disruptive technology and not for the conventional technology? The war will be not be the conventional war; it will be the this thing. So the question arises: how we prime this disruptive technology without a proper structure, sir? So what structure you will like to say, at least in the technology? Because at least military and bureaucracy, they will come, but why not the technology, the industry, they come by themselves and propose a structure that how we can go ahead, how we can contribute. Why not industry should come forward?
Okay, yeah, I get your point. Let me give you a little secret out. Okay, if you think that entire technology is being produced in the private industry in USA, you're out of the equation. The fundamental technology is produced in government funded and government owned, right, or government sponsored research laboratories, even in USA. The Livermore lab, which in USA is not a private lab, it's a government lab. So fundamental research of technology has to be done by the government. And that has to be done across the seams of military and civil, which is not happening in our case. I'll give you the classic example. Classic example is happening in front of our eyes. Space and missile technology are, next to each other. And yet our defense research and our space research don't look in the same direction, right? Though both are success models, the success models are quite different. Right? How could you not have a model as cheap and as great as ISRO in our DRDO? So it is a political thinking which has to come in. And I'm not talking here today, the military is not in this whole story. I've given you where DRDO is largely a civil organization, ISRO is a civil organization, and you are looking at it under the government of India. And this is not a punt on the current government. This is our historic problem. Right?
True.
Both are success models. One is a costly model, one is a cheap model. Okay. Why have we not been able to even synergize these to our benefit? Which means that, like I said, our political bosses lack something.
True, sir. True. What you are saying is very correct, sir. ISRO and the nuclear, this thing comes directly under PMO. PM directly sits on their head, and that's how it is giving, and DRDO maybe. So that may be the answer. So the last question of the evening, though you have already defined this, Mr. Vijay Rayaji is asking, what are the key drivers for Bharat to be future ready in the short and long term, both in hard, soft, and smart ways? You have, sir, has already told about the 5 clusters, but anyway, sir, would like to reiterate.
Look, the first thing I will put it, in fact, I had an interaction with someone very high up a few days back as to how do you actualize ISET. I told him the same thing. You have to get into a knowledge loop, right? Unless you get into a knowledge loop with the technologies, you build knowledge and you use your academia in a great manner, and you synergize the private industry, and unless you do that for each cluster has to have its own knowledge loop, and each cluster has to have interconnectivity at the appropriate levels, from grassroots level, mid level, and the top level. Unless you have an integrated approach to each cluster, which I have said, and where you build long-term knowledge, you will have a problem. And this is something which luckily for us, the government has seized of this problem. It is not as if I'm not trying to even blame this government or any government. I'm talking of our culture so far and the way we have grown as a nation. That's our problem. After all, we have a huge colonial hangover where our complete education system was destroyed. The fact that you come here is a great thing, right? But what we can do ahead is much more, and that's what we have to focus on. And I think the government is doing the right thing. It's up to us to respond in a large manner. That's my sense. And that's my sense after speaking to some of the people who have come and have had a discussion on this and the capability which we have in our country. I am very sanguine that given the right environment, we can do wonders. And maybe this Chandrayaan thing will spur most of us to look together and look inward and look towards each other to do the right thing. Yeah.
Yes, sir. We have the capabilities, but we need some spur, some spark. Thanks, sir. Thanks once again. And over to Madam Sumitra.
Thank you, Lieutenant General PR Shankar, for this enlightening and interesting talk and taking some questions from the audience as well. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today. I wish to thank AVM Sinha for moderating the session beautifully. Finally, I wish to thank all the members of the audience for joining us today. I just wanted to make an announcement that the next 2 Sundays, we will not be having this talk, but we are postponing this talk to 23rd September and 24th September. And our speakers will be General Ata Hasnain and General DS Hooda. So please join us on 23rd September Saturday and 24th September Sunday. Thank you all.
And thank you and Jai Hind.